Just give me a minute, sweetheart. It's already gone." The words detonated in the hush of my Portland darkroom like a flashbulb popping in a sealed coffin, blinding me with white-hot grief. My daughter Lauren stood framed in the doorway beneath the red safe light Richard had wired himself the year Claire was born, arms locked across her charcoal blazer, face carved into the same merciless boardroom mask she wore when she gutted startups for sport. I'd been counting on the Hasselblad to fund the Iceland retreat Richard and I had booked the night he promised me the northern lights would look like my eyes at 25. Brochures still pinned above the enlarger with the lighthouse pushpin he'd kissed before every road trip. But now, 7 months after I held his hand while the monitor flatlined in OHSU's neuro-ICU, 7 months after I screamed his name until my throat bled and the nurses pried me away, my own 39-year-old daughter had sold the camera that still carried the ghost smell of his skin and fixer and the last breath he ever exhaled through the shutter. My fingers were dripping in D76, trembling so violently the stainless tray rang against the sink like a funeral bell. "You sold your father's Hasselblad without telling me?" The question cracked out of me raw, a negative exposed too long. "Mom, it's a camera, metal and glass." Lauren's voice was surgical steel, the same tone she used when she told a founder their life's work was non-viable. Just a camera? 7 months after I carried Richard's ashes to Ecola Point in the same lens cap he'd used as an urn, 7 months after I begged the ocean to give him back and it only gave me salt in my mouth, Lauren had taken the one object I still cradled every dawn, wiping condensation from the prism the way I once wiped tears from his cheek, feeling the phantom weight of his thumb on the focus ring. The betrayal tasted like dark room stop bath, vinegar and despair, burning the back of my throat until I gagged. Standing beneath the safe light that painted everything the color of fresh blood, staring at Lauren, who apparently believed grief had a quarterly burn rate, I swallowed the acid and choked out, "Which shop?" Lauren's wife Harper glanced up from her tablet, where she was no doubt upgrading their Napa suite to the Vineyard Villa. "She's processing. Good sign." Harper's voice was velvet over razors, the same cadence she used to comfort widows before she foreclosed on their homes. "Honestly, Beatrice, hoarding gear isn't healthy. Richard wouldn't want you drowning in 1982. "Don't tell me what Richard would want." The sentence screamed inside my skull, but my tongue was paralyzed. Harper had been telling me what Richard would want since the memorial, usually when it involved me wiring 5 figures for their wellness pavilion or angel round in a kombucha empire. "Analog revival on Alberta," Lauren said, flicking her wrist to check the rose gold smartwatch that probably cost more than the pawn offer. "They gave me $1,500, decent for obsolete tech." $1,500 for the 1979 Hasselblad 500C/M Richard had bought the month Lauren was born, shooting weddings until his hands blistered to afford the body in the 80mm planar, the camera he'd used to capture Lauren's first breath, my first solo show, the Aurora over Crater Lake the night he proposed again on our 30th anniversary with the ring he'd hidden inside a film canister. The camera the paramedics had handed me in a padded donkey bag the day Richard collapsed mid-exposure, still loaded with the roll of Portra 400 we'd never developed because the last frame was his heart stopping. "That kid's worth 30 grand with the backs and the prism," I said, my voice splintering like cracked glass. Harper smirked, a razor slice. "On eBay, maybe. The shutter was sticky." Because I was the one exercising the mirror, dry firing at 1/500th every dawn to keep the mechanism alive, to keep Richard alive in every mechanical heartbeat. But they wouldn't understand. Lauren and Harper lived in a world of Series A rounds and exit velocities, where love was a line item to be depreciated. "I'm buying it back," and the words came out like a vow carved into bone. "Knock yourself out," Lauren tossed over her shoulder. Already retreating, "We fly to Napa tomorrow. Harper's keynoting Women in Wine." Harper paused, tilting her head in rehearsed sorrow. "Beatrice, grief counseling exists. This attachment to Richard's toys is pathological." The door shut with the soft finality of a coffin lid, leaving me alone with the safe light bleeding red across the enlarger and the silence that had moved in the day Richard moved out. Only now, the silence had teeth. But here's what Lauren and Harper didn't know about their delusional old mom. I'd spent 40 years as a photo retoucher for National Geographic, Adobe, and every major magazine west of the Mississippi. Eyes trained to see pixels no one else noticed, layers beneath layers, the invisible made visible. I knew metadata, hidden channels, steganography. I knew the difference between surface and signal. And I was done with surface. Analog Revival was a narrow storefront between a record shop and a cat cafe, windows fogged from the espresso machine inside, walls lined with Leicas, Nikons, and medium format beauties that each held 1,000 stories in their light seals. The owner, Juno, had purple hair and the patient eyes of someone who'd heard every sob story in sepia. "You hear about the Hasselblad?" she asked before I crossed the threshold. "Word travels. Your daughter called, said you might be sentimental." Juno shrugged. "Look, I get it, but it's sold. Guy came in right after her. Paid cash, no haggle." My chest caved in like a crushed light meter. Some collector was out there, Richard's camera slung around his neck because my daughter needed vineyard selfie money. But then Juno leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper. "Found something odd when we were cleaning the body for display. Hidden compartment under the film back, custom job, had to be a machinist. Unscrewed the pressure plate and this dropped out." She slid a tiny anti-static bag across the counter. Inside was a 35mm negative strip, 4 frames, and taped to it a sliver of paper in Richard's blocky handwriting. "Beatrice's Eyes, October 3, 1975, the day I exposed our future." Below that, a string, NEG 4471 PDX 1003BR. My pulse roared in my ears like an enlarger fan on high. Richard had never mentioned a hidden compartment. In 44 years of marriage, darkroom dates where we'd kiss between timer beeps, road trips with the Hasselblad on the dash, raising kids under safe lights, he'd kept this secret inside the camera he'd used to photograph my every tear, every laugh, every orgasm. "Recognize it?" Juno asked. I shook my head, but the code was a flare in the dark. It looked like a negative sleeve number from the climate-controlled archive Richard had built in the garage. "The buyer?" I said, my voice cracking like overexposed film. "Description?" Juno's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because my husband hid this for a reason, and whoever bought that Hasselblad might be in for more than they paid for." Juno hesitated, then sighed. "Didn't give a name, paid cash, but when I mentioned the compartment, he got real curious. Asked if we'd developed the negs. Seemed like he was hunting medium format bodies that came in recently." Someone had been tracking Richard's camera. I thanked Juno and stumbled to my car, the negative strip cold against my palm like a strip of Richard's frozen breath. Richard had hidden this for 48 years. What else had he exposed in plain sight? That night, I opened the garage archive, the one Richard had temperature controlled to 68 degrees. Shelves of negative sleeves labeled in his architect's hand. The code stared up at me. NEG 4471 PDX 1003BR. I'd inventoried every sleeve after his death, but nothing matched. My phone buzzed. Lauren. "Mom, Harper's anxious. She heard you went to the shop." "I tried to repurchase your father's Hasselblad. It's gone." "Perfect. Closure achieved." Her breeziness clawed at my heart like a broken tripod leg. This was the girl Richard had taught to load 120 film at age 6, the one whose first Polaroid he'd framed above the crib with tears in his eyes. When had Lauren become this stranger? "Lauren, there was something hidden inside the camera. Your father left a message." Silence, then sharper interest. "What kind of message?" "I'm not sure yet. Looks like a negative number." "Mom?" Lauren's voice went crisp, hungry. "What exactly did it say?" Her urgency raised red flags. Yesterday relics were clutter. Today she cared? "Just numbers," I said vaguely. "Probably nothing." "Maybe I should swing by, help you search the archives." I laughed, sharp and broken. "Yesterday you said declutter? Today you want to dig through Dad's negatives?" "I'm offering support." "By selling his camera?" She sighed. "Fine, but don't spiral chasing shadows." After she hung, suspicion bloomed like fixer stain. Lauren's AI photo startup, Pixel Forge, had landed a seven-figure round last quarter. Billboards on I-5, TEDx stage. Coincidence? I attacked the archive differently. Richard thought in frames, exposures, NEG, negative, PDX, Portland, 1003, October 3, the day we met at the Portland Art Museum's photography lecture, when he said my eyes were f1.4 in candlelight. BR, my initials, Beatrice Reynolds, before marriage. I found the sleeve, NEG 4471, labeled simply insurance. My hands trembled as I carried it to the darkroom. Under the safe light, I contact printed the strip. 4 frames, empty studio backdrops, no subjects. But the metadata, Richard had etched tiny dots into the film borders, visible only under 10x loop. Steganowafi. I scanned the negatives at 9600 dpi. Hidden inside the grain, audio waveforms. Richard's voice, compressed into the image data, cracked and urgent. Beatrice, if you're hearing this, I'm gone, and Lauren's crossed lines I feared. These frames are blank because she's been selling emptiness, billing clients for AI-generated custom shoots that never happened, using stock models, deep-fake faces, reselling the same assets to multiple brands. I discovered it 18 months ago when a magazine editor asked why their exclusive editorial matched a campaign in Seoul. I confronted her. She swore she'd pivot to ethical AI. I covered the refunds from our retirement fund to keep Pixel Forge solvent, to keep you from knowing your daughter was a fraud. But it's worse now. She's laundering investor money through shell production companies, private jets, Napa strategy retreats, while delivering vapor. These negatives contain the master files, original RAWs with forged EXIF data, blockchain receipts showing the same image licensed to 20 clients, bank records of wire transfers from Pixel Forge to Cayman accounts in Lauren's name. I've also rerouted the diverted funds into a trust only you can access. $6 million in change. Use this wisely. Protect yourself, but remember she's our girl. There's a second sleeve for Julian. He's clean, but he'll need you. I love you in every aperture. The audio ended. I collapsed against the enlarger, the safe light bleeding red across my face like Richard's blood on the ICU floor. Richard hadn't been hiding money. He'd been hiding Lauren's fraud, developing proof the way he developed silver prints under my hands in the dark. The Cayman Trust held nearly $6 million, client funds Lauren had diverted, which Richard had quietly reclaimed and invested in municipal bonds while I slept beside him, unaware he was bleeding out our future to save our daughter's darkness. My phone rang. Harper. Beatrice, we're at PDX, but Lauren stressed about that camera message. What did it say exactly? Just an old negative number. We could delay the flight, come help. Her eagerness was a blade. Enjoy Napa. Hanging up, I pieced it together. Lauren sold the Hasselblad to destroy the compartment before I found the negatives. The next morning, I called my old retoucher, Diego, now a digital forensics expert for the Oregon Attorney General. Richard's steganography is genius, Bia. Blank frames with embedded fraud? Metadata alone will tank Pixel Forge. We met in the darkroom. Diego extracted everything: forged EXIF timestamps, blockchain hashes proving asset reuse, bank records of Cayman transfers. Richard even hid ultrasonic watermarks in the audio, inaudible proof the same files were resold. Masterful. Diego found the trust, $6 million in recovered funds, plus Richard's original portfolio. That afternoon, Lauren and Harper appeared, flight delayed. Mom, about Dad's message, show us the negatives. I projected a decoy contact sheet, sunsets. Their relief was palpable. Then I switched to the real frames. Richard's voice filled the darkroom, raw and broken. Lauren went ashen, her knees buckling. Harper grabbed her arm. This is manipulated. It's not, Diego said. Entering. AG's been circling Pixel Forge for months. Richard's evidence just sealed it. Lauren sank on the enlarger stool, mascara streaking like over-inked prints. How much? Enough for felony wire fraud, Diego said. Unless you cooperate. Lauren confessed through sobs. Started with a lazy AI composite, snowballed into a Ponzi of pixels. Harper knew. She'd booked the retreats on fraud funds. I can help, I said, my voice trembling with love and fury. Therapy for the ego, Lauren. Full restitution. Half the recovered funds to a photography scholarship in Richard's name. She nodded, tears cutting clean tracks through her foundation. I called Julian, our son in Austin. Mom, everything okay? Your father left a perfect exposure. Come home. Julian arrived with his husband and my grandkids, eyes wide at the darkroom. Dad sent me duplicate drives years ago, said keep them safe. Never knew why. We rebuilt over brunch and gallery walks, Julian's laughter echoing where Richard's shutter once clicked. Julian had suspected Lauren's hustle, but stayed away to protect his mental health. Legal shutters clicked, SEC froze Pixel Forge, clients reclaimed their funds. Lauren entered a 90-day program for compulsive founders, therapist's term. Harper lawyered up, then ghosted. I donated $3 million to launch the Richard Hayes Youth Photography Grant. The Hasselblad? The buyer was Richard's old assistant, now a PI, hired to guard the body. He returned it, compartment intact. I shoot with it every weekend, Richard's compositions framing the life Julian and I now share. Every click a prayer. The greatest photographs aren't about light, they're about exposure. Someone developing your negatives when you can't see the image yet. Someone loving you enough to bleed in the dark so you can see in the light. Richard spent 2 years processing my future, one hidden layer at a time while I slept beside him, unaware he was dying to save me from our daughter's darkness. Some people search a lifetime for that depth of field. I was lucky enough to marry the retoucher who saw me in every shadow. Thanks for listening. Subscribe if this focused for you, and tell me in the comments, what object still holds your person's light meter?